So, you guys have chosen the magic approach. Not bad. Magic was used at these races and it could have powerful effects on the outcome of the race. If there was one way to ensure that you were going to win, this could be one of them. Raneb gave you the location of a priest in a relatively unpopular district of the city. You are to go to him, pay him for the spell, and then go sign up for the race tomorrow. As you're walking, you take a moment to really appreciate your surroundings. Rome was the empire's biggest and most influential city. It was where all of the action happened, and also where the current emperor lived. But contrary to what you might think, it wasn't exactly the best place to live, especially not if you were coming from the farmlands. During the times of the empire, you had many people who were attracted and wanted to come to the urban centers of the time, like Rome, Carthage, or Alexandria. They would come in large numbers to the cities in hopes of better lives than at the farm. The problem was that many would come, and many would be left disappointed. The jobs that they were looking for were often not there, resulting in an epidemic of homeless inhabitants. And the work that was available, well, it was kind of difficult to obtain because slaves performed almost all of the menial jobs, and most of the professions like teachers, doctors, surgeons, or even architects. Many Romans simply lived in the worst horrible living conditions. And whether it was by the lack of education or the clothes that they were wearing, poverty was evident. Like, it really wasn't as glamorous as the movies make it out to be. Anyways, you've now arrived at a small building that matches the description and the location that Raneb has given you. This must be the priest's hideout. You enter it and see a man sitting behind the counter. He's wearing robes, he's old, and generally looks a lot like you would expect a priest to look. You introduce yourself and tell him why you're here. The priest looks at you, sees that you're a slave, and knows exactly what you want. You want to win tomorrow's race, don't you? He says. Well, it'll cost you a good chunk of coin. 500 sestertii, he says. You tell him that that's exactly what you want to do, and you pay him the coin. He then asks you what you want on the spell. Do you want a positive spell, or do you want a negative spell? In other words, do you want a spell that blesses you, or curses your opponent? You tell him that you want the negative spell because you simply want your team to win, not necessarily yourself. He goes in the back and starts preparing your order. You hear the sound of what seems to be enchanting, carving, and molding of metal. No doubt he's making you a lead tablet with the spell on it. He comes out and gives you the spell. Now these spells, they had to be activated. It wasn't a simple matter of buying the spell and then just waiting for it to take effect. You had to first place it somewhere strategically close to the event that you wanted it to impact, and oftentimes you had to activate it orally by reciting what was written on the tablet. The priest tells you that the best place to put these tablets is somewhere on a boundary line. And boundaries, that is to say locations that delimit the end of something and the beginning of something else, like doorways, graves, or wells, were the best place to get in contact with the magical beings that would help your spell come to life. One of such boundaries was right outside the Hippodrome, the arena where the chariot race would take place. Place it there, the priest said, and you would have no trouble activating the spell. Then, once you're on your chariot and you want to activate it, simply recite what's on it orally and watch the magic happen. Literally. You then leave the shop, go back to your master, and wait for nighttime. Once it gets dark, you are to go and bury the spell close to the Hippodrome and then come back in the morning ready for your race. It's now the following day. It's race day. You planted the spell last night and made sure to get a good night's of sleep so that you woke up feeling rested and ready to face this big challenge. Raneb tells you that he's already prepared your entry into the race. You are to race for the white team in a 4-chariot race against the red team and Diocles himself. To win, any of your teammates had to be first. It doesn't matter if it's you or your teammates. All that matters is one of the whites gets first. The best strategy here was to make sure that Diocles crashes his chariot, thus destabilizing the reds enough for one of the whites to win. Raneb doesn't really expect you to be the one to win, because I mean you've never raced before, but you never know. Once the preparations are complete, you make your way to the Hippodrome. Now the Hippodrome was a sort of arena designed specifically for chariot races. The Greeks were the first ones to use it, after which the Romans adopted it because they just loved taking things from the Greeks. But this specific Hippodrome, the one that you were currently going to, was the biggest arena in the empire's history. It was called the Circus Maximus. Seating as many as 250,000 people, that's right, 250,000 people, it was a massive structure. It was long and thin to accommodate the chariot racing events. It was like one of those places in the empire where men and women could attend events at the same time, because women usually weren't allowed to watch sports at the same time as men, or even at all. It was also one of the places where people could see their emperor in person, since the emperor would sometimes make an appearance at big racing events. Many people would use this opportunity to voice their opinions on the current emperor, and you could usually tell how the Romans felt about a certain emperor depending on their reaction when they saw him at these races. A good reaction means a good emperor, a bad reaction and chaos and a mob means a not so good emperor. Besides that, there was a lot of gambling and intense rivalry between the different factions. You see, there was like 4 racing teams at this time, each denoted by its own color, and people really loved to get attached to one of these teams, sort of like we have fanatics being attached to modern day teams today. But this was ancient Rome. There was a lot less regulation than what you have today, and as a result, oftentimes you had a lot of fights, quarrels, mobs, and chaos. Add on to that the fact that you could gamble on the outcomes of the races, and you can be sure that you have a recipe for disaster. You get to the games, register yourself for the white team, and head to the racer quarters to prepare for the race. You're not too sure how this is going to play out, but you're excited. I mean, if you win, you're gonna make a lot of money. You just have to make sure to use the spell properly. You're now lining up at the starting point of the race. As soon as these gates open, you are to gallop like you've never galloped before. You look to your left and see Darius with the red team members beside him. They're on the inner edge of the track, which means that they're going to get a starting advantage because they'll have a better angle at the turn. You see, the biggest risk of these races were the turns. They were extremely dangerous, so dangerous that oftentimes the racers would run into themselves and crash their chariots. Like, people paid good money for the seats that had the best vantage point of these turns. It was like arguably the only exciting part of the race. Not only that, but in the Roman version, the reins that were used to control the horse were tied to the racer's body, which on one hand that was good, but on the other hand, if the racer was to fall, he was to be dragged until he could somehow find a way to cut himself loose, or until he died by the friction. And when you have other racers that are determined to destroy you and your teammates, you can be sure that this is going to be an exciting race. Are you ready? Because it's about to begin. The racers all prepare and the gate releases. The race has begun. As soon as you start, of course, Darius is in first position. He wasted no time getting a heads up. And since he has the better angle, he's probably going to stay in that position for the duration of the race. You're approaching the first turn and make sure to take it slowly to not get, well, destroyed. As you take the turn, 2 chariots from the blue team crash into themselves and their drivers fly off. Ouch. You're galloping and Darius is still in the lead. The other drivers, they're all trying to run into each other and to get themselves to crash. You take the strategy of keeping your distance, ensuring somewhat your survival, and then hopefully coming up from behind at the very last minute with the help of your spell to win the race. As you approach the next turn, 1 white chariot and 2 green chariots crash into themselves, the drivers fly off, and you're pretty sure that they're all dead. Like, there was no way that they could have survived that crash. There's but a few drivers left, and you're starting to feel a little bit confident. As you take more and more turns, more and more chariots run into themselves and crash, and they get removed from the race. Initially, there was 4 teams and each team had 3 chariots. You suddenly realize that there's only you and Darius left, and he's way ahead of you. There's no way that you're going to catch up to him in time to finish the race. There's now only 1 turn left. In a 7-turn race, it doesn't last longer than 10 minutes. It's you and Darius. Now is the time to use the spell. You had memorized it before, and all you had to do was activate it orally and hope that it worked. Hope that the priest was legit. You say the incantation and watch as Darius' chariot crumbles in front of you, effectively removing him from the race. Wow, this actually worked. There's nobody else in the race but you, and you're about to cross the finish line. You've actually won. Congratulations. After the race, back in the Hippodrome, as you're about to be officially recorded the winner, a man suddenly appears and says that he has something important to announce. That you've cheated, that you've used magic to win the race, and that you caused Darius' chariot to crash. He says that he has proof in this lead tablet that he found outside the arena. He shows the tablet and everybody sees the spell. The spell kind of gave you away, like you used it in plain sight and caused the chariot to crash without any other visible reason for it crashing. Like, this man saw you yesterday at the priest and quickly connected the dots. It then wasn't hard to find a tablet outside of the Hippodrome because, I mean, where else would you put it, right? You had to put it near a boundary. Like, that's it. As the Roman authorities hear this, they take you captive, they declare the win to Darius, and they send you to the Roman jail to await your fate. You've lost the money, You've lost the race and you're probably going to lose your life. I'm sorry, but you kind of failed the quest. It's game over.